places in the country. We are already occupied, and we have been occupied. I need to make that very clear. The
Right.
United States not only backed the Fujimori genocide committed against the Andean people, in which over 300,000 indigenous women were forcibly sterilized without their knowledge, in addition to the massacres committed against indigenous communities, primarily in the Andes, but also in the Amazon region, and against any person who is deemed vaguely progressive,
Hmm.
vaguely leftist. So, like university teachers, students, young men in general. There are mass graves in the Andes where we still don't know where all those bodies are. We don't know the names of everybody that was murdered because there were so many people that the government murdered that the government just also contributed to the loss and the erasure of those actions because it was done in the name of self-defense. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but the United States contributed to those massacres. Those
So
massacres were committed with the
let's
training
slow this
done
down real quick
from the
because
U.S. military and the CIA.
you're saying that since Dina's no longer president, Dina's no longer the dictator
No,
no more. There's a new
no.
dictator.
Dina was cooed, so now we have a new one.
By another
Ah,
crazy motherfucker.
yeah, no, yeah, another slimy ass fucking bitch. His name is Jose Heri, and he is a member of the party Somos Peru. He is a sexual predator. He has multiple denuncios or like police reports filed against him by young women. Um,
Are you
and
safe
he
talking about this right now?
say what?
Are you safe talking about this right now?
Yeah, nobody is. I mean, nobody knows who I am. I mean, like they only know about me for my environmental stuff, but like I'm only famous in Spanish. So
Okay.
like, but this is not going to reach anybody that can actually touch me. So
Okay. All right. All right. I just want to make sure because you're in Peru talking about the new dictator. So
fuck them. Fuck me. I plant trees. What do you do, bitch? Come at me. I'm useful. You not. I'm doing positive things for society. You ain't. Like whatever. The world's ending anyway, you know. So like, if you don't speak out, like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, we don't got shit to lose. Now is the time. It's been the time.
oh yeah,
Um.
the lines in the
So
sand. Yeah.
like, yeah, like personal safety be damned. You know, like I don't care. Um. But he and the Peruvian Congress have just passed a motion essentially allowing the United States Army to come into Peru whenever they want, starting now,
Oh,
and do military
wow.
exercises and training. So
Wow.
this is like some Monroe Doctrine shit
I heard this
where we
one.
are seeing the erosion of our um, sovereignty more and more every year. Peru does
Yes.
not have oil. We kind of do in the selva, but not nearly as much as Venezuela. What we really have, the United States wants is copper,
Mm.
and we are seeing a massive amount of illegal mining, particularly in the Madre de Dios region, which is a little bit south of where I currently live, a little bit southwest, and it is absolutely eradicating the Amazon. Where there is gold mining, that forest is gone. It is never coming
Cheap.
back. It is too contaminated,
So
and
it's all destroyed. It's like all
yes,
cut down.
it's not just cut down, but in
Uh-huh.
order to mine gold, you need these massive kind of like flooded pits. And so not
Gotcha.
only are the trees in the understory completely destroyed, but also the hydrology is also fucked. And because of the way that oil or
Jesus.
not oil, that gold is extracted, you're also introducing other dangerous heavy metals in that extraction process. And then the
Gotcha.
waters are obscenely contaminated. That leads to local people having very high levels of very dangerous heavy metals in their blood, such as lead, and that leads to brain damage in young children. It stunts their growth, it stunts their learning. So these are like young people that are growing up in this environment that will never be able to quote unquote productively contribute to society, but they'll also never be able to meaningfully contribute to their communities because they are so incapacitated from such an early age. It also
Mm.
leads to infertility and sterilization. It leads to a number of other health crises, all of which is just going to lower your life expectancy.
So to the
And the horrible
sterilization of
thing,
the women, this is what contributed, and the
so this
government knew
contributes
about it.
as a side effect. What
Okay.
Fujimori did was he launched. He was a far right dictator. He did a
Okay.
self coup shortly after he was first elected. And let me pull up the date so I don't speak incorrectly. Um, but yeah, so he did a self coup in 1993, And after that, he decided that he was going to overturn and rewrite the Constitution in order to benefit him and his cronies. So he completely abandoned the quasi progressive platform that he ran upon and capitulated 100% to the far right.
Okay.
And this is key. And he adopted a very hardline far right economic and social policy. One of those policies, in order to combat poverty, was to go into the Andes and go into indigenous communities and offer women injectable birth control that sterilized them.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
not birth control. They were not helping with family planning. They intentionally sterilized these women without their knowledge, sometimes even up to the extent of performing unwanted hysterectomies on women who came in with like uterine problems, with pregnancy complications. They just
Right.
sterilized them
Right.
without their knowledge or consent in a lot of cases. Fujimori was incarcerated for other issues because he tried to flee the country with, I believe, like $2 million worth of soles to go to Japan, and then he decided he was going to come back one day, and he like live streamed basically that he was coming back to Peru, and the police were like, how convenient, and arrested him as soon as he got there. So he was not actually arrested for the crimes against humanity that he committed. And so that was a genocide that was committed under Fujimori, was a forced sterilization of indigenous women to prevent them from reproducing because they're supposedly in poverty, not because of systemic racism and colonialism and imperialism, but because they just were reproducing too much. And this is very common Malthusian um, policy, where you blame the poor for their own suffering because poor people are more likely to have more children because you live in poverty. Your children are less likely to survive, especially in the Andes. So you try to have more children to guarantee that somebody will take care of you in your old age. Somebody can help you out on the farm. And Peru is a very Catholic country as well. And so birth control in general is very much looked down upon and not encouraged. And a
Mhm.
popular form of birth control is literally just like separation of the family. So like the man and the woman just separate. So because otherwise he will essentially forcibly impregnate, rape his wife again and again and again, and she will be forced to bear children. And because they don't believe in birth control because we are so Catholic. And it's a very complex situation for that reason. It's also why we had so many deaths during COVID.
Mhm.
Because of the forced sterilization of the indigenous people, most of whom were Andean, about 270,000 of which were Andean, 30,000 of which were from the Amazon regions. We have many Amazonian regions. Peru is much more Amazonian than Andean,
Mhm.
but the Andes are much more densely populated. And so that's why more people in the Andes were sterilized.
Mhm.
So when COVID hit us, we had the most deaths per capita because people live with this generational trauma. And they remember, they're like, oh, the last time a public health individual came to us saying that we had to follow this policy because it was for our own good,
I got
we
sterile.
ended up losing, yeah, like how, like Lord knows like how many, children in those communities. And so there is an extreme distrust, especially between rural people who need the most access to healthcare and healthcare professionals. So the healthcare literally cannot reach them because of this trauma, and
Right.
especially because the government has never answered for it. Fujimori died in September of last year without ever admitting to what he did or standing trial for those crimes. There has never been justice. There has never been any kind of reparations. And these women are still, and their descendants, their daughters, are still trying to fight for their rights, for some kind of recognition and compensation. But they have been
Mhm.
very largely ignored by the federal government. And it's one of the biggest failures in public health policy in the last 50 years, and because this did not happen. This happened in the 90s, but this is probably like the most significant like health traumatic event that Peruvians
Mhm.
in mass have experienced.
So the mass graves under Dina, what is your estimate? Because I last saw it was hundreds. You're saying that it was thousands.
Under Fujimori. So
Okay.
Fujimori
Okay.
rose to power on the heels of the Maoist guerrilla organization Sendero Luminoso, which is
Okay.
translated in English as the Shining Path. And the
Okay.
Shining Path was active from 1981 to about 1990. This is key because
Okay.
Fujimori came into power in the early 1990s.
Okay.
The leader of Sendero was actually arrested right after or right before Fujimori came into office.
Okay.
And so Fujimori adopted a scorched earth campaign against Sendero. And so at the time, the Peruvian military was working with the United States military and CIA to train and counterinsurgency to combat Sendero Luminoso. Sendero Luminoso, essentially their founder, I believe his name is Guzman, goes to China and observes the Cultural Revolution in China. And in a very non-Marxist Leninist kind of way, he comes back and says, we should do the exact same thing here. Ignoring Peru's history, contradictions, needs. He's like, yes, let's just do it. And that's not. There is not a single like Marxist-Leninist party in the entire world that recognizes like Sendero as a legitimate like ML association, military movement, guerrilla movement, what have you. They are very much broadly accepted as a terrorist organization. Once they started going to rural villages, the first one they went to was called Chuschi, which is in Ayacucho, and Ayacucho is one of the poorest departments in Peru. It also remains one of the most dangerous departments in Peru for foreigners because of the massive trauma they experienced under Sendero. To this day, their first action, Sendero's first action, was burning voting booths so that people could not vote because they did not recognize the legitimacy of Peruvian elections, which is like, I guess fair because like it's a neoliberal country, but also like you're gonna do that before any kind of like political education or like talking to the people or like any kind of intelligence gathering. Like what are we doing? And so like you're doing this in front of like very conservative like campesinos who do not speak a lick of Spanish. They speak Quechua, and even though some of them spoke, yes, at least in that area because we have many. But even the ones who spoke Spanish, when the Sendero members were speaking to them about like their grand like Marxist Leninist Maoist proposals, they would literally turn. There happened to be an anthropologist living in the town at the time, and she wrote a book on her experiences called Para Defendernos, or To Defend Ourselves. And they told her like they're speaking another language, we don't know what they're saying. So these young guerrilla fighters essentially were trying to do some form of political education, but it was so inaccessible and it was so highbrow compared to what indigenous folks, especially in the rural countryside, are used to hearing, that they could not even begin to connect with it. They did not know why they were there. What they did know was that at the time when Sendero first became active, was that Sendero wanted to defend their culture and their way of life. And so that is why initially communities signed on to work and partner with Sendero. Initially, it got to a point after a couple of years where Sendero started indiscriminately just murdering anybody who did not immediately want to side with them. Whether or not people just wanted to maintain like neutral relations, they wouldn't have it. And they got to be extremely violent against the indigenous people. And as the first rule of a guerrilla movement, you don't attack the peasantry, dog. Like, those are your biggest allies. Right. What is your deal? So it was completely devastating. And Fujimori, as a result, after Guzman is captured, adopts a scorched earth campaign against Sendero. And when the communities start going to the government in Lima asking for help, instead of going and kicking out Sendero, they went and just murdered the entire village.
Got you.
Everybody. They didn't give a who was Sendero, who was a campesino, and it's very clear who was who. They just went in and murdered everybody. There is a museum in Lima, and it's free. It's one of the only free museums in Lima, and it is dedicated to the memory of Sendero and the legacy of Sendero. But the Peruvian military government killed more people than Sendero ever did. And that's very important because that legacy and that memory and that history has been very actively erased. It's also one of the reasons why our political organizing here in Peru is so weak. We have a couple of left-leaning parties, all of which have different problems. One of them being is over-centralization in the capital. And so they don't have a very broad reach out here in the rural areas, even if rural folks are much more predisposed to be kind of leftist by proxy because they're fighting organically for the same things, for water, for land, for, safe food free of chemicals and contamination, for their indigenous history and titulación to be recognized, and for justice and reparations. All of those things are things that leftists and communists fight for, but they don't want to fight for it under a communist banner because they feel so betrayed by Sendero, and they have so little trust in the other communist parties. Patria Roja, which means red homeland, was a party, the Communist Party, founded by Jose Carlos Mariátegui, who was our principal, writer, communist thinker, scholar. He's like our Lenin if he had survived. He died very young. Mariátegui was amazing, and Mariátegui has not been translated very well into English. There's one collection, I think, on Pathfinder books that you can find of his work, but nothing else has been translated. And like I was saying earlier, that's very, very important because his work is still relevant today. Everybody should read Mariátegui, but not everybody can because it's inaccessible, because that translation has not been done because he's too radical. Too radical to be digestible by the West, right? And Patria Roja, his party, was affiliated and associated by the government at the time, by the Fujimori government, with Sendero Luminoso. And so Patria Roja, despite the fact that it was a very militant communist party, lost a lot of power and a lot of trust and prestige as a result of that, and it has not recovered to this day. So like where I currently live in Cusco, last year I lived in Ancash, which is farther north. Mm-hmm. I'm in the southwest. Ancash is central west. Ancash is Patria Roja essentially dissolved, and I came back while the youth branch was being reformed, and I was one of 2 active members of their youth branch. And then I left. I don't know if it's still active now because I moved. There was not a branch active in Iquitos when I was living there for 8 months. I tried to reach out to my handlers in Lima. They're like, we just don't have a presence. I was like, that's terrible. I came to Cusco. I reached out to my handler in Ancash, and I was like, do you have anybody here? And he was like, oh, yeah, we do have a guy, but he's kind of permanently been moved to Lima. You would be the only member at large. And I was like, this is the legacy of Sendero, and this is the legacy of Sendero and Fujimori's policies against the left. It has left us very weak, over-centralized, and afraid to assert ourselves in discourse. When we have protests as progressives, I wouldn't even say leftists, but as progressives and as a student movement, you can see that the demands are very tepid. They are asking for very basic things, like constitutional reform or just out the Constitution, let's get a new one. But those demands often come from a very specific sector of the university students and the campesinos, who still remain militant to this day. To a large extent, it is urban folks who are becoming more and more reactionary and counter-revolutionary and afraid of organizing as time goes on. So we even had a solidarity organization here in Cusco with Palestine that has basically dissolved. We have very little real political organizing in Cusco, and we are supposed to be one of the most progressive cities in the entire country.
So this new dictator, what was the person's name again?
This is Jose Heri.
So Jose Heri has no opposition basically at this point. The only opposition that Jose Heri will have to worry about is another right winger that's going to overthrow them, like how Dina was over. Is Dina dead right now?
No, I'm not quite sure where she is, but she's fine. She's fucked off. She is off the radar. Fuck her. But because our rightful president is still Pedro Castillo, and he was just condemned to 11 years. Yeah, to 11 years in prison for trying to do a coup. Mm-hmm. And I want to really hammer home on this concept. Yes. Because Fujimori dissolved the Peruvian Congress and the Supreme Court in 1992, effectively making him the dictator of Peru. And while the coup was criticized by Peruvian politicians, did the U.S. invade in order to expel this self-made dictator? Who did dissolve the Congress? Who did dissolve the Constitution? Did Maduro do that? I don't think so. But the United States did not invade Peru at that time to expel Fujimori, even though what he did do was a self coup in order to make himself the president. Castillo did not do a self coup in order to make himself the president. He tried to dissolve the Congress, actually using like legal precedent where if the Congress denies his cabinet appointees X amount of times, he is allowed to dissolve Congress because they're obstructing his ability to govern. And so there is legal precedent for what Castillo did, or at least there is legality for it.
Mhm.
And he was cooed almost immediately because he wanted to rewrite the far right Fujimori constitution to re-benefit the people, to go back to the agrarian reform, to be able to have some kind of justice and reciprocity for the crimes that have been committed against indigenous people. And it was very important that Castillo himself is campesino. He is not necessarily indigenous, but he is campesino. Those things are very interrelated, but for the purpose of discussion, he is campesino. And it's not a coincidence that it is he who was couped, a socialist campesino president. He was accused widely, not only by Peruvians but also by other South Americans, of being, I think, just being stupid, of not knowing what he was doing, of being incompetent, of being an example of left wing um, incompetence and hypocrisy because he ran on a very progressive platform and then was not able to effectuate anything he wanted to do because just like when Obama was in office, the far right Congress did not allow any of his legislation to pass. Now, Obama was not a socialist, but they still stonewalled his legislation. The same thing happened here in Peru. And so while folks under the Obama administration were criticizing Obama for not doing X, Y, Z, whatever, he also couldn't do those things because he's being stonewalled. The same situation was happening here. And so you had this image in the Peruvian national consciousness of the failures of the socialist president, but not the failure of the Congress to work with him. Because the Congress is still stacked to the far right with the Fujimoristas. Keiko Fujimori, which is Alberto Fujimori, the dictator's daughter, continues to run in every single presidential cycle with the support of the United States in order to try and re-privatize.
So why is
And
she not
Peruvian
in
industry
power
is
now?
already
Why is she
because
not in
she's very
power?
unpopular. We hate her ass. She's a bitch. She sucks. She has no policies except to reconstitute the dictatorship of her father. And everybody knows this. So everybody hates her. But she's also not in power currently because that's not how the chain of command works, basically. So, like, another congressman essentially had to be chosen to replace Dina because Dina was vice president. She was couped. So, congressman had to take her place. And now, in the election cycles happen again, Keiko is already campaigning. So,
I mean, Deidre Wilder, who's a teacher out in Miami, I used to have on the show. He was totally right when he said that because he's Peruvian as well too. He's like, dude, all they do is just make their money, steal as much money as they can, and then they
quite literally
leave.
in
They
Fujimori's
bounce.
case.
It
Yes.
seems like this is the tradition.
Fujimori literally bounced like a brief,
Kill mad
classic,
people.
like comic book bullshit, like briefcase full, oh, why are you so comically evil?
Right.
Fujimori was, while he was alive, like the fourth most corrupt person in the entire world.
Mm. Mm.
Right, fourth most corrupt political leader, I should say, which, like, person, because all the most corrupt people are usually politicians, but massively corrupt, and again, it was the corruption charge and the stealing and laundering money that he was tried for and put in prison for, and not the crimes against humanity against the indigenous people. And that's very important for like our current context because Peru is a country that has a lot of colorism. It has a lot of like hatred towards its indigenous folks. We see that particularly with how Castillo was treated by the public following the coup against him, and how people largely talk about left wing and progressive governments because they are majority um, non-white governments. And so as a result, there's a lot of extra contempt laundered their way because there is that racialized element to it. And I guess like that brings us kind of like full circle back to Venezuela because we have a lot of folks on the ground here cheering on this coup. A lot. And there are a lot of folks
while
who
they're under a dictatorship, a brutal dictatorship, they are cheering on the coup.
Yeah. cheering it on. They're
But
happy
would
about
you
it.
call it a coup though? Because all they did was just
I would
kidnap a
call it a
guy
coup.
and killed 80 people.
It's definitely a coup. Like it's definitely. I mean, he was kicked. Like what else do you call that
Yeah,
shit?
yeah,
And like while like the government institutions are still intact, if the United States decides to invade again and it decides to carpet bomb people, like what happened in Gaza, how
yeah.
exactly are the people going to defend themselves from U.S. carpet bombs? Like that was the
It's
United
impossible.
States' strategy with the
Right.
Somoza dictatorship in Nicaragua was just to
Yes.
carpet bomb everybody in the capital indiscriminately.
Yeah.
And did it work? No. The people left in the dead of night and they're like, "Fuck you, bomb the city, bitch," and we'll come back the next day and we'll win the revolution. Thank God.
Mm,
But if the United States like that can't happen again. You know, like history
yeah.
does not repeat itself. You know, like it's so if the United States comes and just carpet bombs Caracas, it will be devastating. Like how you can't defend yourself from bombs even if you have an automatic rifle. It's not though that's not an equal playing field. It's
Right.
just inconceivable. So it's very tense, I would say, because people don't know what's going to happen. There are a lot of Venezuelans who are talking wanting to go back. When I went to get my empanada in the morning today, because I'm moving, I had my big suitcase with me and like my cat. And the lady was asking like, "Oh, are you going to Venezuela? Are you Venezuelan? Are you moving?" And I was like, "I mean,
They
I'm
just
moving
think that, oh my
to the
God, this
center
is
of
great.
the
It's like,
city,
yeah,
like an
what?
hour away, but like,
Wow. Wow.
no."
I mean, I this is in closing. I am yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. But I am just astounded by the level of acceptance that America still has with
Yes.
people around the world. It's like America has done such a great job at shadowing their atrocities. They killed 80
And
people.
whitewashing them.
They killed 80
They've done a
people in
very good
Venezuela.
job. Well, like, what I will say is, I especially learned this in Nicaragua, when I was doing my master's research, is that they've done a very good job putting the blame on people who defend themselves against empire versus what the empire actually does to people. And so if you struggle against empire and you win and you suffer the consequences of United States imperialism, of blockade, of constant intervention,
Right.
you brought that on the people by resisting. And you just should have let the neoliberals pillage your country and bleed you dry. And
Crazy.
people forget how bad it was in the neoliberal era. Like as like an occupied country here in Peru, like our inequality grows every single year. Extreme poverty and poverty grow every single year. Informality grows every single year, not just for internationals and migrants like myself, but also for Peruvians. Like I
Mhm.
have folks that I know who have doctorate degrees who are working in informality because they can't get legitimate jobs because the informal economy benefits so much for an enterprise because they don't have to pay benefits. They don't have to pay legal living wage. They can bypass all of these worker protections and guarantees. And if you're working in informality, you cannot then denounce your employer because you're informal and you're not legally employed. And so there's all these benefits to empire, and people would rather live in this uneasy stasis
Wow,
than
wow,
fight
wow.
for something better because you could win. And if you win, things will get better and they'll get worse at the same time until the United States is overthrown. And that is like really the big thing that I want to hammer home in closing. If the United States succeeds in occupying Venezuela, and Peru is now allowing the United States to run military drills willy nilly in the country, considering the fact we're already occupied, the United States will menace Colombia. They will menace Nicaragua. They will use this in order to menace and invade Cuba as well. And they will try to install a series of far right backed military governments across Latin America. So,
Literally.
whether or not you like Maduro, it is incredibly important to recognize this has nothing to do with Maduro and everything to do with consolidating United States power and hegemony in the region to control its people and resources. That is the most important takeaway. Your opinion on Maduro does not matter because it is not about him. It is about this power grab and controlling the region.
Right, right, right. And I don't know how else more to explain that because that's exactly what is going on.
Yes. And
Because
it's
you
like if
already
you
know,
want to celebrate in the short term,
right?
that you crazy for that. You're gonna look back in a year and just be like, oh,
What
that
is
was
your
cringe.
problem?
That was wrong with me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, because again, like we have never seen the United States intervene anywhere militarily in which anything good happened for the people. And
hmm
so when Venezuelans are talking to me on the ground here, they're like, "Oh, like the economy is going to get better. We're going to have more opportunity." It's like you specifically actually will not. That opportunity is going to go back to the bourgeois, and it
right,
is going to go to the U.S. occupiers and the U.S. military ruling class that
right,
installs itself. You
right.
will not see that money. And if you think you are struggling now, it will be nothing compared to what happens in the future when the United States just bleeds Venezuela dry.
Yes, and people should relook at how the economy was before Chavez took power. If they really
Yes,
want to
because
feel,
there's a reason why the Bolivarian Revolution took place to begin with.
it was inflation like crazy. Look, kind of like how it is here in America, with the inflation is out of control. People have to go on credit. People are not able to pay their credit. Now they got Afterpay and all these other
Yeah.
apps that help you out and with interest. You know, it's going to be tightening. And if you think that uh, Donald Trump did anything to make it better here in America, and you think he's going to do it in Venezuela, you are smoking something, probably some good shit,
Crazy.
but
I don't want that shit. They got you fucked up.
yeah, like
But I will say this, and I've told this to my Venezuelan friends here, is that a government like the United States that is currently kidnapping, torturing, and murdering Latinos, not just migrants, because they are just kidnapping people off the street because they
literally,
look Latino, whatever the fuck that means, whether or not they have papers or not, there's no due process. They're not checking their documentation. If they have documentation, they do not care because they're showing up at their immigration hearings to abduct them before they even get into the building or even as they're going out, despite the fact that they're receiving green cards. They
yeah,
don't care. If the government is abducting, torturing, and murdering folks, they are not going to invade your country to help
mhm,
you. That should
yeah,
tell you everything you need to know about the government's motivations, especially because when Venezuelans have gone out to celebrate the overthrow of Maduro, they are being abducted by ICE. The government does not care about you.
that-
It doesn't give a shit about you. It's not about you. It's about turning Venezuela into a colony for the United States' own benefit at this time of intense imperialist decay.
yes, yes. And Raymond Parker, I don't want to take any more of your time. I want to thank you so much for joining this panel. You are also welcome. If I know Thursday you're mad busy, but if you are welcome as well
Oh,
to.
Thursday's my day off, so I'm
Okay,
good Thursday.
so you are welcome to come back on for the part 2 of this series. Sorry about the miscommunication. The email, I suck at emailing.
You're totally good. It's also my fault for not having my email downloaded to my phone because I have like no space. Because in order to do my stuff, I do a lot of TikTok and influencing. So you can find you can find me on social media on TikTok and on Instagram as Raimundo y Pepino. That is
Mhm.
RAIMUNDO YPEPINO.
Oh,
Pepino
just
is
send me
my
the link.
cat.
Email me the
I'll
link.
send you the links.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you can see a lot more of like our environmental work and me hanging out with my cat, mostly our environmental work. I may or may not make a post, a very dangerous post, talking about this situation from the same perspective because this perspective is very much lacking um, in Peru in a lot
Mhm.
of our um, in a lot of spaces. So, and I
Yeah.
have a lot of reach with the local population here in Cusco. And I think this is something that we actually really do need to have a serious conversation about and the implications of the United States embarking on another wave of imperialist attacks and occupation in Latin America.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a history we need to remember
Well,
because
please
we've been here
enjoy the
before.
rest of the day the best way that you can. Thank you for all the work that you do. Um, and have a really good day. And for everybody
You
that's on
too.
social media, have a really good day as well too. Please like, share this out, share this out. I saw some people sharing on Twitter. Thank you so much. So
Thank you
thank you
so much
so
for
much.
having me on.
And I'll talk to you later. Have a good day.
blank period. On my black, brown, and indigenous. Gotta holler if you really feeling this. Gotta holler if you really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?